Hey everyone! This is a quick reminder to subscribe and hit that like button. It lets me know that you are enjoying my content. Also, feel free to drop your suggestions for future stories in the comments below. Thank you for listening, and let's dive right in. I rubbed my eyes and stretched my arms, feeling the familiar ache settle into my shoulders. The dull glow of my computer screen was the only light left in the office. I checked the time, 12:01 a.m. Finally, I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. The night shifts always drained me, but I was used to them by now. Too used to them. The quiet hum of the office, the stale air, the way the fluorescent lights buzzed just a little louder when most people had gone home, it was all routine. I reached for my coffee, but the cup was empty. Of course, my stomach grumbled in protest. I had forgotten to pack dinner again. Maybe the vending machine still. No. I already knew the answer to that. The break room vending machine had been out of order for 2 weeks. I had checked twice tonight, knowing full well it wouldn't miraculously fix itself. I sighed and shut my laptop. The office was nearly empty now. A few computer monitors still glowed in the distance, but the hushed clicks of keyboards and distant murmur of phone calls from earlier were long gone. The janitorial crew had already come through, vacuuming in silence like ghosts drifting between cubicles. I grabbed my bag, slinging it over my shoulder as I made my way toward the exit. Pushing through the glass doors, I stepped into the lobby. The night security guard barely glanced up from his phone as I walked past. "Night," I mumbled. He grunted something in return. Outside, the cold hit me immediately. I shivered and pulled out my phone. 12:03 a.m. My taxi was already waiting. A dark car idled at the curb, engine running quietly. I took a step forward. The driver didn't acknowledge me. I hesitated, just for a second. Then, shaking off the weird feeling, I reached for the door handle and slid inside. The door shut behind me with a quiet click. Inside, the air was colder than I expected. Not the kind of chill from the night air, but something deeper, stale, unsettling. I adjusted my bag on my lap and cleared my throat. "Hey, I need to get to Brookfield Apartments, Maple Street." The driver didn't react. His hand stayed fixed on the wheel, his head tilted slightly downward. The dim streetlights cast shadows over his face, making it impossible to make out his expression. I frowned. "Did you hear me? Brookfield Apartments, Maple Street." Still nothing. My fingers twitched against the strap of my bag. I considered getting out, maybe calling another taxi, but then, without a word, the car began to move. I blinked, caught off guard. Okay, weird, but we were going in the right direction. I exhaled slowly, settling into the seat. Maybe he just wasn't talkative. I had dealt with plenty of odd taxi drivers before, ones who asked too many questions, ones who played nothing but static on the radio, ones who chewed loudly on full meals while driving. At least this one wasn't trying to make small talk. The streetlights flickered past in rhythmic intervals. I watched them through the window, trying to ignore the creeping unease settling in my stomach. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw his hands. My breath caught in my throat. His fingers were too long, the knuckles pronounced, the skin stretched tight over thin, bony joints. His nails were uneven, dirty, as if he'd been digging through something he shouldn't have. I swallowed hard and looked away. The ride wasn't long, just a few more minutes. Then I'd be home, and this would be just another weird taxi ride to forget. Except we passed my apartment. I sat up. "Hey, you passed my place." The driver didn't slow down. I turned toward him fully, my pulse picking up. "Hey, my stop was back there." The doors locked. A sharp, mechanical click. My stomach dropped. I glanced at the rearview mirror. There was no reflection of the driver. My breath hitched. That wasn't possible. The mirror reflected the street behind us, the passing buildings, the empty road, but not him. Then, finally, he spoke. His voice was low, even, too calm. "You should relax," he said. "We're not quite there yet." I went rigid in my seat. The air inside the taxi felt thicker, suffocating. My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag as I stared at the empty rearview mirror, where the driver's reflection should have been. This wasn't normal. None of this was normal. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "What do you mean?" My voice came out quieter than I wanted. The driver didn't answer. Instead, the radio crackled to life. I flinched at the sudden burst of sound, expecting static or music, something, anything, but what came through the speakers made my blood run cold. That's $4.50. Have a great day." My breath caught. I knew that voice. It was the barista from this morning, the one who handed me my coffee, who smiled as she repeated my total. But that wasn't possible. The audio was grainy, slightly distorted, as if it were playing through an old cassette tape. Then another voice, overlapping the first. "Oh, sorry, I wasn't watching where I was going." A man's voice, a stranger. My stomach churned. That had happened earlier today. Some guy had bumped into me outside the subway station, nearly knocking my coffee out of my hands. I had barely noticed it at the time. But why? Why was I hearing it now? The taxi kept moving. I tore my eyes away from the radio, looking out the window for some kind of grounding, a street sign, a landmark, anything familiar. And that's when I noticed something was wrong. The city was too dark. Not just midnight dark, but unnaturally empty. The streetlights cast pools of yellow onto the pavement, but beyond them, the world seemed to swallow itself whole. The roads stretched longer than they should. The buildings blurred together, their windows either blacked out or reflecting nothing at all. Then, I saw something that made my breath hitch. A billboard, one I had seen a few blocks back. Same advertisement, same peeling edges. Had we looped back? The driver said nothing. I turned sharply to the other side of the street, searching for anything to prove I was imagining things. Another billboard, the same one. A cold sensation crept up my spine. I wasn't just imagining it, we were driving in circles. I looked back at the radio just as the speakers crackled again. "See you later, sweet boy," my voice said. My breath hitched. That was me. I had said that. To my cat. The last thing I said before leaving my apartment tonight. I turned to the driver, pulse pounding. What the hell is going on? The car kept moving, and the driver didn't answer. My heart hammered against my ribs. The taxi kept moving, the same billboards flashing past like a broken record, the street stretching too long, too empty. The city outside felt hollow, as if I was watching a badly rendered dream, a world made of cardboard, repeating itself over and over. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers shaking as I unlocked the screen. Full bars, full damn bars. I opened my messages, tapped on my coworker's name. Me. "Hey, something's wrong. Call me." I hit send. Nothing happened. No confirmation bubble. No delivered sign. I frowned, tapped again. Send, send, send. Nothing. I tried calling. The ringtone never started, just an immediate, eerie silence before the call failed. My throat went dry. This wasn't a dead zone. My signal was strong. My phone should be working, but it wasn't. Something was blocking it. I turned to the driver, gripping my phone tight. "Hey, stop the car, right now." He didn't even flinch. I clenched my jaw and checked the time. Maybe I'd been in here longer than it felt. Maybe I was overthinking. 12 a.m. I blinked. That didn't seem right. I could have sworn I got into the taxi at 12:03. I'd been in here for longer than 4 minutes. I stared at the glowing numbers on the dashboard. The soft green light illuminated the cracked plastic screen, the digits frozen in place. I checked my phone again. 12 a.m. I swallowed hard. I lifted my wrist, looking at my watch. 12:07 a.m. No. The clock wasn't just wrong. Time wasn't moving. The taxi rolled forward in endless silence, the road stretching, looping, dragging me deeper into something I didn't understand. I gritted my teeth. I said, "Stop the damn car." The driver exhaled softly, like a sigh. Then finally, he spoke. "You're starting to understand." I felt like I couldn't breathe. The taxi was still moving, still looping through the same warped streets, the same frozen time, the same silence hanging between me and the driver. He had spoken, but his words only made things worse. I turned to the window, pressing my palm against the cool glass. Maybe if I focused on the city outside, I'd make sense of something, anything. Then I saw it. My reflection was delayed. I blinked. My reflection didn't. I lifted my hand an inch. My reflection followed a second later. A full second. Like a bad video stream lagging behind reality. I moved my head. My reflection dragged behind as if it were struggling to keep up. I sucked in a sharp breath and turned to the driver. He was humming. Soft, low, almost like a lullaby. Something about it itched at the back of my skull. I knew that tune. I knew it. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to think. Where had I heard it before? The melody drifted through the car, slinking into my ears, wrapping around my thoughts like a whisper I couldn't quite understand. Until suddenly, I did. The subway. That song had been playing in the subway station. right before I froze. Right before I what? My breath caught in my throat. I scrambled through my mind, clawing at my memories like they were slipping through my fingers. I remembered the barista's smile, the stranger bumping into me, the last thing I said to my cat before I left my apartment. I remembered stepping into the subway station. I remembered the dull hum of fluorescent lights, the faint smell of coffee and damp concrete. But after that, nothing. Just a blank space where the rest of my night should have been. I didn't remember getting into this taxi. My stomach twisted. I turned to the driver, my voice barely more than a whisper. "How did I get in your car?" He didn't answer. He just kept driving. The car slowed. For the first time since I got in, the tires rolled to a stop, the rumble of the engine fading into silence. I exhaled in shaky relief until I saw where we were. Not my apartment, the subway station. My stomach clenched. Why are we here? The doors unlocked with a soft click. I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag and shoved the door open, stumbling onto the pavement. My breath came fast and shallow as I turned toward the station entrance, the dull fluorescent lights flickering down the stairs. Something pulled me forward. I ran. Down the steps, past the turnstiles, into the dim underground tunnel. And then, the world shifted. The air thickened, the station around me growing hazy, as if I had stepped into water and everything had warped. The commuters on the platform, they weren't moving forward, they were moving backward. I watched, frozen as the entire station rewound like an old tape. People blinked out of existence, their steps retracing. A man unfolded his newspaper and tucked it under his arm. A woman reached into her bag and pulled her phone away from her ear, mouth moving in silent reverse words. Somewhere in the distance, the echo of a train screeched backward into the tunnel. My hands trembled. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. A presence loomed behind me. I turned slowly. The driver stood there, hands in his coat pockets, watching the station with the same eerie calmness he had carried throughout the entire ride. His gaze drifted toward me. "You can't quite get out if you never got in." His words sliced through my brain like ice. I turned back toward the platform, just as the past played out before my eyes. I saw myself. Alive. I was walking down the subway stairs, just like I had earlier tonight. Unaware, distracted. Then, a man bumped into me. A small, mundane accident. I watched as I stumbled, my foot missing a step. I fell. My head smacked against the edge of one of the stairs. I winced, instinctively stepping forward to help, before remembering. I can't. I wasn't there. I wasn't real. The other me got up. She rubbed the back of her head, gave a small, breathless laugh. A stranger offered his hand. She took it. For a second I thought, maybe she was fine. She took a few steps forward. Then she collapsed. The moment she hit the floor, the station shifted back to normal speed. People screamed. A woman knelt beside my body, pressing her hands to my shoulders. Someone yelled for an ambulance. I stood frozen, watching my own death unfold. Medics arrived. They checked my pulse. They performed CPR. I could see it in their eyes the moment they knew it was useless. They covered me with a sheet. The police arrived next, questioning the bystanders, writing down statements. Then, my body was carried away. The subway station emptied. No one remained. Except for me. And the driver. I turned toward him, my throat tight, my hands numb. His expression was unreadable. Not cruel, not sympathetic, just expectant. "I never got into the taxi," I whispered. He gave a slow nod. "No," he said. "You didn't." The weight of the truth settled over me. The ride had never been about getting home. It was about getting me here. To this moment. To this realization. I swallowed hard. "So, what happens now?" He stepped aside, gesturing toward the open taxi door. "The ride isn't over yet." I turned toward the car, staring into its dark, hollow interior. The seat where I had been sitting. The space I was supposed to return to. I took a slow breath. And then, I stepped inside. The door shut behind me. The weight of it, the finality, settled in my chest like a stone. For the first time since this nightmare began, the driver sighed. A deep, exhausted sound. Like someone who had done this too many times before. "I know it wasn't easy," he said. His voice wasn't like before, no longer cryptic, no longer distant. There was something human in it now, something almost regretful. I stared at him, unsure how to respond. "It never is," he continued. "Most people fight it. I just let them figure it out." The car's engine rumbled beneath me, steady, patient, like it had all the time in the world. I turned toward the window, expecting to see the familiar city outside, the empty streets, the flickering streetlights, the eerie stillness of a world that had felt wrong for hours. But it wasn't there anymore. The streets were dissolving. Buildings that once stood firm were bleeding together, melting like wet paint running down a canvas. The neon signs flickered and faded, their words unreadable, their colors blending into the dark. I twisted in my seat, trying to find something solid, something real. But my apartment, my office, the subway station, everything I had known, everything I had spent years inside was simply vanishing, like it had never been there at all. I gripped the seat beneath me, pulse hammering in my ears. "What's happening?" The driver didn't seem surprised by the question. He just kept his hands on the wheel, his expression unreadable. "The place you knew doesn't exist anymore," he said simply, "because you don't exist in it anymore." I stared at him, at the calmness in his voice. It wasn't cruel, it wasn't mocking. It was just the truth. I turned back to the window, watching the last pieces of my world melt into the darkness. I thought of the people I had left behind, my coworkers who would come in tomorrow and see my empty desk, the barista who had served me coffee every morning, my cat, who was probably still waiting at the door for me to come home. I swallowed, my throat tightening. The driver exhaled softly. "I don't decide where you go." I turned toward him, blinking. "What?" He kept his gaze on the road. "I don't decide where you go," he repeated. "I just take you there." The taxi rumbled beneath me, rolling forward. A chill swept down my spine. "Then where are we going?" He gave a small shrug. "Forward." I opened my mouth, then closed it. I looked back at the city, what little remained of it. It had almost fully disappeared now. Nothing left but a few faint lights flickering in the void. I exhaled slowly, something inside me settling. There was nothing left to hold on to. The driver shifted slightly, adjusting the mirror. For the first time since I had entered this car, his reflection was there. It was a simple thing, a small thing, but it unnerved me more than anything else so far, because it meant something had changed, something had ended. He met my gaze in the glass. His voice was softer now, almost distant. "You were never lost, Alisha," he murmured. "You were just waiting for the ride." I swallowed past the lump in my throat, letting the words sink in. I closed my eyes for a moment. Then I leaned back against the seat. The taxi drove forward, into the unknown.